Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you can go to officehours.global if you want to join and be part of the conversation. If you are here and you're in Mukana, you become one of the producers, and you kind of find your way there through officehours.global. But once you become a producer, we're answering your questions. This is your show. We have a lot of questions today, so we won't spend too much time prepping for them. The first hour is open questions, whatever you want to talk about. Second hour, we've decided to spend a little more time on. Today, we're going to be talking about setware and what we bring to sets, food and gear and clothing. And we've got a lot of questions building up around that. So we'll get to that in the second hour. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about building remote kits. We're going to work with Boxed Up, tryboxedup.com. They build lots of kits, and they're going to talk about the process of building kits and how they do it. And then on Friday, we have LumaFusion back. We're going to be talking about multicam editing on the iPad. Terry is back, and she's going to be chatting with us. And then, of course, remember on Saturday, we have the unstreamed Office Hours education. We're moving back to 8 o'clock, so we'll only have 45 minutes of Q&A on Saturday morning, general Q&A, and then we'll take a little bit of a break, and then we'll come back and have our educators on at 8 o'clock. We're shortening that. We're not shortening, but moving it up from 8 to 10 because we're starting to make room. The following week, we will be starting going back into Unreal and MetaHuman with Nick Justin at 10 o'clock. So we're kind of making room for that. Okay, Bill, let's jump into the questions.
Absolutely. Our first one comes from James Babbitt in San Diego, and I know it's on a lot of the member panelists. And he asked, could Tucker tell us about his experiences in Tokyo?
Can you, Tucker?
A little bit. The flight's real long. The people are fantastic. I am a major social anxiety person, and so are they. So this is good.
You found your tribe.
These are my people. Yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, the teams that we get to work with, the scale of what we're doing is just incredible. It's fascinating to see, and when you think about the fact that every 2 years this happens, and the amount of technological advancement that happens every 2 years, their systems change a lot between every time, but they stay also very consistent, which is, it's kind of a weird thing that happens. And this being my first, it's amazing. It's amazing. The thing that really has
what you've been accountable for specifically.
Yeah, so I'm working judo and karate on the commentary systems under Joe Wasser is kind of the big boss. There's one above him, but he's way up top, and then I'm all the way down at the very, very bottom of that food chain, working directly with broadcasters and faxing systems every day. We've got around 40 commentary systems that we're working with for all different languages. But the one of the most amazing things is just the way that the amount of respect between cultures is just absolutely incredible. So, yep.
That's great. Hopefully we've got it's amazing that we've got quite so many. I think that I think Joe moved through our group and found some really great people. So it's good. So it's a good thing. All right. Well, thanks. That's our update from our person in Tokyo. All right. Let's go to the next. Yeah, exactly. Next question.
Leo Mendel's up next out of Pinner in the UK, and here in the panel with, I have a set of C-suite customers who want to up their Zoom audio game. However, here's the rub, no headsets, no lavs, ideally no mic in the shot, and they want to spend less than $150 each. Here you go.
I'll probably do a Yeti, full size, not the Nano. You can get it right outside. You can make it, you can set it to a setting that's directional and put it, we've done it before. It's not as good as this, but it's actually pretty solid. And you can set it just outside frame, especially if you frame it the way I'm framed. If you frame wide, you do have to frame them at shoulder, but if you set it right outside of it, we found that it's pretty good to have all of the requirements that you have. It's not the mic that I would choose all the time, but if someone said you have $150, no extra money, has to be out of frame, that's the one I would use. Go ahead, Tucker.
I'd find a way to convince them to use headphones. The Yeti's a great option. Getting them on some kind of headphone just so you can get into some of the more advanced features in Zoom really makes a huge difference.
Yeah, go ahead, Leo. And then
the headphones is not so much of a problem. It's the microphone and the fact that they need to literally rock up, use it, and walk away.
Yep.
C-suite people just don't want to spend any time attaching a lav or something, and they don't want the mic in the shot. The other one I was thinking about is shotgun mics. If anybody had any suggestion on
it's
there.
just shotgun mics at that price. And just remember, they're going to pick up a lot of the room, you know, and I have one right there that I keep testing and keep finding it wanting. And that's an NT2. Go ahead, Carl.
So to keep that budget, I'd go the Behringer Bigfoot. And as the name suggests, it's a perfect clone of the Yeti. But yeah, headphones, as Tucker says, getting duplex sound would be best for getting sound quality. Yeah.
Behringer, we can do what you can do for less. So anyway, go ahead, Chris.
In the pre-show, a gentleman named Vic popped on, and he had this mic. He bought it at Walmart. It was $25. And I got to say, I was impressed. I thought it sounded pretty good. When he moved it up, you know, just out of frame, actually just hanging into frame a little bit, it sounded really pretty good. For $25 for a USB mic, I was impressed.
Yeah, I the only one that we've used really, because we used to put the Yetis in our kits, you know, so that was what we used for a long time. And we put them right out of frame. Now that I'm used to radio mics, I'm used to it sounding a lot better, but they sound good. And again, I've never found a shotgun. It just picks up too much of my room, and I've got stuff all around me. I've got moving blankets and things and everything else, and I still hear this kind of roominess that I don't like. So I think, and I don't hear that with the Yeti. Go ahead, Chris.
Are you talking about? Are you piping the shotgun through your noise assist also?
Yeah.
Still, and it's still no.
It's ancillary. It's ancillary sound. It's not. You know. It's not a noise. I'm not
presence.
Yeah. It just doesn't have the same presence to it. But I think but we've used the Yeti in hundreds of events, and it's the best one for that price, in my opinion. Next question.
Moving on, it's Rupert McRae next. And Rupert says, is there any way to pipe audio into a Zoom meeting without taking over active speaker while still allowing Zoom to automatically switch between other people who are speaking?
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, we inadvertently did this about an hour ago. So you can have 3 channels of audio going into Zoom for a meeting. Not sure about webinar, but for the meeting, I know you can do 3 simultaneous. Once a 4th one comes in, it bumps out 1. It'll simply go to whoever's loudest in the mux. So if someone new starts speaking, like what I'm talking about, if you're playing like elevator music in the background, it'll go to that person at first. But the second someone's speaking over elevator music, you know, because that music's, let's say, lower, it'll go to their window. So it does cut out. So you can do a test of this. I'm just set up a meeting with 4 or more people. And then you can actually have 2 people having a conversation over elevator music. The elevator music must be lower than their talking voice. So you can kind of do it on the meters. Take a look at the meters, how we do it. Make sure it's probably about 6 dB, so -30 in our parlance, where it's people are tweaking to -24, and it should work, about 3.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
The question for Carl is, if there's a pause in the conversation, does it switch to whoever has the elevator music playing?
Yeah, so that's right. So it will go back to the elevator music. So if you're trying to cut a show that way, then you'll have to have that person have no video, audio only, and then your screen, so just have their video off. It won't switch to them if the person who's cutting the show says don't show non-video participants. It'll only cut between video participants. It won't cut between the sound person generally, or cut to nothing. So that may work, but it depends how you set it up if you're going out to YouTube.
I'm trying to think of, I don't know. Probably going to get us in trouble here, but I want to try something really quickly here before we go off. Is I think that if you share computer audio in advance, I'm not sure if it puts me in front. So let's just try this for a second.
I was going to say the same thing would be worth looking into.
Yeah. So I think that if I share and then I play.
I've taken all that's left.
So I'm going to talk. This is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down. I should be taking priority right now. And am I
I'll try and talk over Tucker.
And we're going to have a conversation. Yeah. So
maybe,
Chris, how are you today?
Tucker,
and I'm going to add in with an announcement here, and we'll see what happens and whether it goes to me eventually. And of course it did. So that's good.
Now stop talking for a second. No. Keep talk again, Bill, and then stop talking.
'Twas brillig in the slivey toes, did gyre and gimble in the way, ball mimsy, for the borough grows, and then I got mum shaft sound grave, beware the jabber walk, my son. Applause.
That works. I'll stop now before we get ourselves into too much trouble. Anyway, so yeah, so the so that worked.
That was a share.
And that is in the advanced share inside of, so you go to screen share, go to advanced, go to computer audio, and then you turn that on. It's very high quality audio, and you can play it in the background. So if you want to solve that, you can, and then I'm just controlling the audio volume based on iTunes. You know, I just opened up Apple Music and it worked. Go ahead, Rupert.
And from our end, or at least from my end, it was pretty overt. It said Alex Lindsay is sharing computer sound right across the top of the gallery.
But it still cut to.
Yeah, it didn't change the view. It just gave me the banner.
Beacon view is important.
Yeah. So I think that would be the solution. Next question.
We've managed to solve it. Excellent. Leo Mendel's up next, and from Pinner UK, and he says, does the receiving bandwidth and connections go up on Zoom depending on the number in the gallery, or is it just one composite feed?
All right, go ahead, Rupert.
Well, you are definitely receiving an individual feed for every window in the gallery, so it will be proportionate. I have seen the quality seem to scale though, and when I've been able to look at a gallery in one computer and pin somebody else on a different computer and see their picture improve on the first computer I was looking at. I can actually kind of demonstrate a little bit of this. I've got the meeting pinned on another computer. I'm bringing that input here. And so we are seeing, I don't know what's happening with the color, but you can see the bandwidth for me. Now, if somebody can go back to gallery view, whoever's cutting can go back to gallery view. We will see, I mean, behind the scenes here, obviously is the gallery. And that is the bandwidth I'm pulling in for those feeds, which is 2.5 meg at the moment.
And I think that it definitely does some, as the gallery gets larger, the quality of each person gets lower. I think it's doing some math there to try to keep everybody going. Go ahead, Leo.
The problem is for a limited bandwidth event, and it's a wedding, and what they don't want to do is find that they have X number of people join and they just literally lose their feed out.
I've never seen Zoom use more than 6.5 megs down, ever. Like I've just, so I don't know if that's the case or not, but I've never seen it in real life. Go ahead, Tucker.
If Zoom gets in a bad position bandwidth wise, it'll start doing freeze frame tiles or super, super low frame rate tiles, but you'll still have an event. So yeah.
But I've generally seen it sits at about, it'll get up to a 1080p in the non 1080p version. I've never seen it go, I think, above, I want to say it's like 4.5 or 5 megs a second. And then it seems to want to cap off at 6.5, or 6.25 to be precise. And it seems that both the single, if you're on it, or the individuals. Now, what I don't know is what happens if we, like within what we're doing, if we select all of the people and force them all to 1080. I don't know if that puts more stress on everybody else's. No, Rupert.
Could we test that real quick? We have like the panelist each just pin somebody random, and I can see if the gallery, and then spotlight the gallery view, and I'll see if the bandwidth goes up.
Yeah, so everyone just pins somebody. Everyone's going to pin the same person, and then it won't help, but we'll see.
Okay, so on gallery view,
well, I was wrong.
On gallery view, I'm seeing 2.6, 2.8 meg.
Oh, megabytes, yeah. But megabits, we're now at 10. We're now at 15 megs. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so it will scale well when people aren't pinning. It appears that if you start, like, I have a feeling it's a good note for us, for the panelists, as we go into Zoom, the new Office Hours 2.0. It does seem to skyrocket the downstream for everyone. If everyone starts pinning different people, it starts to scale up because it's grabbing a higher resolution. Everyone looks better, but we just have to know that could be an issue. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just one simple question. Is there any way to tell who was the most pinned person then? I'm voting it was Ken.
That's funny. How many people I did Ken too. How many? For some reason, everyone grabbed Ken. I think Ken was in the right position where he was like, "Oh, I won't pick like everybody else at near the top." He's in one of the lower rungs, and he's brighter. That is a funny, like, we all subconsciously picked Ken. We were all pinning Ken. All right, Jeffrey.
You're our pinup dude.
Sorry, Ken. I didn't pin you. I pinned Richard, but I did a double pin because I have the 2-screen experience.
Right.
I put somebody in the main one. And I'm assuming you're talking about the one that's actually going to go full screen rather than the gallery view one.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that I think everyone pins the same person. It doesn't affect it. It's when everyone's picking different people because it's telling the reflector to go to 1080p. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, I think the midpoint only serves up a single stream. So if the midpoint is told that person's 1080p, the reflector's told that person's 1080p, that's what I'm sending to everyone. So
we haven't seen that with Zoom ISO, where with Zoom ISO, when we turn it on, it doesn't appear that everyone's getting the same level. We're getting 1080p, and I have to say it looks amazing when everybody's at 1080p at full frame rate. But we don't see it with everyone. It seems like there is somewhere where it's shifting down a little bit, but it's definitely not shifting down as low as it normally would go. Go ahead, Leo.
So if I utilize this, if I spotlight the wedding at the remote end, and then I have the gallery,
I think you'll be fine. If you get 10 megs down and no one else is pinning, you'll be fine.
We're struggling at this venue. That's the problem we're trying to work out.
Yeah.
So they're already talking about bonded 4G connections, which
will be really rough.
I've said it's really rough. So I've told them already, record locally regardless.
All right, next question.
Moving on, this one comes from our friend Hasmuk in Cape Town, South Africa. What is the relationship between frame rate on the 6K video and sample rate on my Mixpre? And he's specifically interested in 44.1 versus 48 kilohertz on the audio side.
Not a lot. I mean, there is technically the reason we use 48 is because of 24 frames a second, 48 was connected to frame rate originally. Like that's why 48 is 48, is because 24 is 24. But but really the idea, the samples are not really on frames. Now your app may think of them as frame, being tied to a frame, but on advanced applications, you can move subframe because you can move by the sample, not by the frame. But it's 48, it's 48,000 samples per second. And they're not connected to frames. Go ahead, Hasmuk.
Yeah, my learned colleague was doing post editing. And he said, I took the video at 29.7 frame rate on the 6K, but the Mixpre was on 44.1. And he said he's having trouble with sync of the audio. So when he tries to sync it, it drops frames or the audio is going faster than the video.
Yeah, because it's resampling it. It's stretching it to the sample as opposed to resampling it. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, the DV standard is 48 kilohertz. And if you get off, now almost all the good NLEs or other video processing engines understand this, and they'll do a resample from 44 to 48 without dropping a beat. They know the math for that. But when you get into odd sample rates, I ran into it at 32 kilohertz, 20 something kilohertz. Everything goes out the window and has to do a lot more processing than it should. And you get that kind of mismatch and higher low pitch. It's a bad thing to do. So if you can always stick on 48 kilohertz as a sample selection, you'll always be safe.
Yeah, there's 44.1 is really a delivery format, not a record format. So you want to stick with 48. It'll make everything a lot easier. The big thing that I do if I'm doing any kind of heavy edit is I conform everything. I know that that's old fashioned, but I have a lot less trouble than everybody else. So if something isn't fit into the format, I just run it through a compressor and move it all to Apple ProRes, move it all to the frame rate that I want, move it all to, like, I just do all of that, except when I'm using B-RAW because I might want to do some adjustments. But outside of that, I almost immediately conform it because everything runs smoother. Like all these apps can do it. They just don't do it very well. Next question.
Chris Earle in Maitland, Florida is up next. And Chris says, curious as to why Office Hours doesn't use the Zoom raise hand feature rather than going old school. Maybe preferable to a panelist versus holding their hand up. Plus, I imagine it would possibly open up a programmatic hook for future functionality.
Go ahead, Carl.
It causes the gallery view to rearrange, so we don't want that.
Yeah, it causes havoc on our end. So when you open it up, if anyone's pinned, it starts limiting everything that we can do on our end. And so it really breaks a lot of things when people raise their digital hand as a panelist. So that's why we don't use it. We are finishing a between other shows, we're finishing a panelist view that will allow us to do exactly what you're talking about, but inside of Mukana. So it will happen in the back end. And then what we can do there is tie that information into through Zoom OSC. We can tie that to our switcher. So that's going to be something that's very useful to us. So we are looking at future functionality, just not inside of Zoom. Next question.
Hasmukh Gajar is back from Cape Town. OG has been mentioned a few times. What is an OG? How can I be anointed as an OG?
You are definitely an OG, Hasmukh. OG is a slang term for original gangster. So go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say exactly that. It's an early adopter, one of the crew who was there from the beginning. That's kind of the slang term for it.
I'm just being provocative because in the after show, there's a discussion going. I say, okay, let me just clarify this once and for all.
Yeah. So it's just people who have been around for a long time. I mean, there's a lot. I was just checking. I was managing the list the other day, and it was really interesting to see all the names that are still here, and then all the names that aren't. But it's just like, or the ones that come in and out. It's just an interesting thing when you look at like the first 100. But I would say anybody who's been here, since 2020 is kind of in that group. And then we've got some folks that have come in later that have become part of that group as well. So it's not so much a time frame as much as how much they've been here and how much they've contributed. So, and so it's just kind of slowly, it's a slow process. I mean, we're using a new technology to do a very old community building. So it has a lot of the old nature to it as well. Next question.
Ryan Webb in Indianapolis, Indiana is up next. I have centralized production facility in need of high quality RTMP solution for 8+ encode paths. Would the Elemental Live be an appropriate solution for this, or should I look elsewhere?
Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm going to come in with the bargain basement option for everybody because it's my thing. Everybody's probably aware of the Uray device that I've got on display at the moment. That's the one that's copied by everyone. It's sold under so many brand names, it's not funny. But they also do multiple encoders and rack-mounted encoders. So if you're after a solution that won't break the budget, they're a good, reliable company to go for because it's the stuff that everybody else rebrands as their own.
The quality of the of the RTMP out of the Elemental is probably some of the best that I've used. That's why I've had so many of them. I think at one point I had probably almost 30 of them in different sizes, and it is different. Like when you say high quality RTMP feed, I think of that encoder. There are some custom encoders that we've built that might have a slightly more tools. The big thing with the Elemental is that you have an enormous number of levers. That's both good and bad. So, you can do a lot of tweaking to get the most quality out of it. It's also completely controllable by REST. So you can automate it all. So you can sit there, anything that the interface can do when you open up a web page to run an Elemental, you can write code to do, and so all those settings, starting things, ending things, changing things, moving things, all of that stuff is addressable. And so it's extremely it's still, I would consider the most powerful encoders that we've used. We've used a lot of them. So if you're looking for quality, I would say that it's definitely not the cheapest solution in that process, but I think some of those prices are coming down. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, I just used the Kiloviews recently and was very, very impressed. I mean, it's definitely not an Elemental, but they have a 4-channel rack mount unit that's very, very good for what you're looking to do. So
yeah,
something worth looking at.
And we have like the Elemental that I use for a lot of the work that we have has eight inputs into one machine. So it literally just, in fact, I've had one that has 16 inputs, and we've literally run 16 HD SDI, 16 HD streams from the same encoder. And without it really, I mean, it does get to a point where it's at 60-70% utilization at that level. But it works pretty well. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just a quick point on the Kiloview stuff. That is the OEM manufacturer that NewTek use for things like the Sparks, HDMIs and SDIs. Right. But they do their own version of the firmware. I haven't tried it yet to see if it works better or worse, but they do have an RTMP and RTSP mode on their version of the firmware, which NewTek doesn't.
And in the not too distant future, we're going to post some test plates for people to use that you can run through your encoder. It will not be able to encode it. That's the point. It will be able to do some level of encoding, and that way you can decide how good one encoder is versus the other. I shot a bunch of footage with the ocean, which is kind of the hardest thing to shoot and get, because there's no way that an encoder can keep up with it. So then you can make a decision of give it the same bit rate, and you give both encoders the same bit rate, push them out, and then look at the frames and see how they look. Next question.
John Foltz, it comes from in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, and he's talking about the Parsec video gaming encoder thing. Doesn't allow control of a Mac computer, only Windows. What do folks recommend for Macs?
TeamViewer works really well. It's a little expensive to make it actually work. I mean, we still use Apple Remote Desktop, because we use a lot of VPNs. So we find that to be relatively stable. AnyDesk drives is a little crazy, but it works. It's cheaper. Go ahead, Tucker.
Splashtop's a good option as well. I would put Splashtop above TeamViewer in most situations. But as far as like actually running it for production, there's not a good solution that gets you 60 frames per second, good quality color. Max, just for remote production, this sort of thing, go with a PC with Parsec. Sorry.
And Teradici, I think yesterday was bought by HP. So
really,
yeah. I don't know if that's rumored or not. Oops. So anyway, it's been burning around. It's been burning through a bunch of groups that I'm in outside of this one. So yeah, Teradici, it looks like might have gotten picked up by HP. So next question.
Lawyers just called. This is not forward looking.
Yeah.
Courtney Gooden of Hollywood here on the panel says, what did everyone think of the price point of the SD A20 Mini? Is there a place in the lesser world of prosumer equipment for a lower priced all digital UHF wireless, or does the cost of getting FCC approval make that impossible?
Go ahead, Carl.
Got you covered. This was only announced a few days ago. I think it was announced in line with the A20. So if you want to go to the bottom end, but the same frequencies, same distance technically. So if you take a look at the features, they line up almost exactly. Then it's not going to be an A20, of course. But if you need the same frequency range, so they make a 2.4 gigahertz version of this as well. So if you want to go, I think it's the same price though. But if you want to hit the megahertz range,
I think the range on the A20 is a fair bit more.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Ends. Yeah. This is kind of the middle of that frame
distance.
rate.
I mean distance.
Yeah, and
so power. Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, so this is kind of the bottom end of what you can get for similar.
And Stuart.
Wow, Carl, I expected it to be at least a couple of months, but the same day. The price listed, I had to go looking for it because I couldn't find it on Sound Device's own website, but it comes up as $2,200 US in B&H with no shipping to Australia. Okay, so I'm not buying stuff from B&H. And ouch, $2,200. But Sound Devices is always expensive, but it always lasts.
It lasts, and each piece is done well. The thing is it's cost of the materials, cost of engineering. I mean, they have packed. I mean, and you can watch it. For those of you who are watching, you can watch yesterday's show. They packed unbelievable amounts of quality and services and pieces into that little box. I can't believe how much it did. I knew that it did a lot before we brought John on, but while we were going through the hour and he was showing all the things that they added to it, it's an incredible amount of engineering. You're not going to get that for less than that, but you can definitely get something that works most of the time. And it's a big difference between working on a film set, which is what it's designed for, and us working in our little office, or the road goes work fine, for that, or in our kitchen or whatever. You can do wireless for a lot less. Go ahead, Carl.
Just quickly, there's a very good reason why not to buy this unit from the United States. If you're outside the United States, buy it from your local vendor. Watch yesterday's show to find out exactly why.
Very important. In fact, I would recommend everyone buy them from outside of the United States. So anyway, so I think no one's here, so we can just say that the international one has less restrictions than the US one does. So it's for a bunch of IP reasons, and so which we kind of touched on. So I would recommend buying international. So go ahead, Stuart.
Taking orders now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Matt,
I was
Matt
about
will
to
solve
ask
that.
Hasmuk if he's got a supply.
True Audio. Yeah, Matt can set us up, connect us with True Audio, and True Audio is going to get a whole bunch of orders from Matt. They're going to be Matt. You're about to become True Audio's whale. Like, where did this guy come from? All right, next question. Whoop, can't hear you, Bill.
I'm sorry. Moving on to Josh Kaufman, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Teleprompter size recommendations. He's got a 50 millimeter lens, full frame, talking head on a 35 millimeter cooking show style view for a fixed camera position. The subject needs the chat comments text large enough to read without difficulty.
In general, I would recommend the 24-inch from Prompter People. I think that one's going to give them the easiest visibility where they can look up and see what they're doing. So I think they're the only ones that make that even remotely cost effectively. You technically, if you're only putting up one question and it's not too far away, I mean, less than 10 feet, you could probably get away with the iCan portable 12-inch, which we bought lots of. So, because those are easier to ship. The 24-inch is a big beast, so we don't ship that one around. But both of those will work, but the 24 will be a lot more comfortable. The big problem with the 24 when you get it too close is that you start seeing eye scanning, whereas the 12-inch will be small enough that they can read it easier. Go ahead, Tucker.
We use a lot of the 19-inch Prompter Peoples, and they're great. So yeah, 19 seems to be a really nice sweet spot for when you're traveling them a lot.
Yeah. Next question.
Talak Miguel Lopez Waterman, our friend in New York City, says, does the PR40 require phantom power? What gain preamp levels are needed for this mic?
Go ahead, William. I can't hear you.
I was going to say it doesn't require phantom power. I didn't read the full question.
Go ahead, Carl.
So it's a dynamic mic, so no need for phantom power. And as far as what you'll need something that can do at least 60 dB. So it does go into something that does 60 dB, a good quality preamp that does 60 dB, because that's kind of going to be the top of most ranges. Mixpre 3 and those kind of ones will be 70 to 75, so they'll easily handle it.
Yep. And that's something to look at when you're looking at preamps. Is to make sure that you're buying a preamp that kind of sets the good preamps from the cheap preamps. Is part of it. I mean, there's all kinds of things that set those apart, but that's one of the things that makes a big difference is what is their upper range. And I would say, 60 would be the minimum, and 70 is probably what you should be targeting. Next question.
Jonas Dattel, Reutling in Germany. Has someone tried using a Kiloview G1 encoder to join a Zoom meeting over SIP?
Anyone use that over SIP? I don't think anybody's done that. Interesting. I wonder what the latency would be. I think joining the Zoom, if you're trying to pull it, I think it might be fine. I think that the latency would be too high otherwise. Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm actually not seeing SIP support listed on Kiloview's website for that particular box. So I'm not sure you'd be able to.
Maybe Jonas knows something that we don't. So yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, we haven't tried it. Next question.
David Brady in New York City says, trying to diagnose issues sharing content from SIP 323 Zoom room systems into a Zoom meeting via hardware and through the endpoint motion video is horrific. Is there a method where I can capture stats and experience to bring to network engineering?
Go ahead, Rupert.
I would click through your Zoom dashboard and through the metrics section. That may give you some useful or some guidance at least. You can go in here and set threshold levels for latency and jitter and packet loss and stuff like that, and they can be set up. You can give meetings an overall score and participants. So if your endpoint is a participant, you'll be able to drill down and should be able to get the stats for that specific participant, and that will look something kind of like this, where you can get a graph of what the audio and video performance was throughout the duration of your meeting.
Yeah, and I mean, what we've used in the past is for packet loss and measuring a lot of the is our Meraki's, but I don't know what you have access to as far as routers go, because they'll pass a lot of information through them, and whatever's going through them, you'll get to see what's going on. I will say I wouldn't have high expectations for a 323 connection. so I'm not sure, I know that you're dealing with probably something like Cisco or Polycom or something like that, but it's a 323 is a pretty rough connection in general. But if it's worse, then I would get it through a router that's going to give you a lot of telemetry data. Next question.
Comes to us from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, do you think certifications as a whole encourage hiring managers or HR professionals to make less effort to evaluate the whole person's suitability for a task? Or do you think they serve a practical purpose in the hiring process?
I think it depends on who's hiring. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, in my experience, and I went through a big process when I was in the early part of my career of going through a bank that was merging with another bank, and they had to look at the entire staffs of both banks and kill them, kill half the people at least. And so the thing was, it's a reductive process at the beginning. You're trying to eliminate, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. This is now maybe he or she will work. Maybe he or she will work. So in that ruthless first review, anything wrong will get you knocked out really fast. And after that, you can move to the qualitative, who's the best candidate for that. But boy, if you don't make it through those first rounds, you're history anyway. So there's nothing you do is going to reveal who you really are if you can't make it through the first round.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that now just sort your resume, like build your resume that's out of order, like that doesn't have the right text size, doesn't have all those things in the machine that's going through it and looking for things, just misses it. You don't even get considered. So those things make a difference. It's definitely looking for college degrees. It's looking for certifications. I mean, that does help you through that first level of machine sorting, because it's not a person. It's literally an AI. When they're getting 800 of these, they're looking to call that down to 30 or 40 that they can, and really, but I admit, as someone who doesn't have any certifications at all and doesn't have any degrees at all, I rely heavily on, who like in being part of a larger community and helping that community all the time, because that's going to be your social network is always going to be more important, because you're going to be recommended. I had a job that we did last year. It's a pretty big job, and every person that they went to referred me to the job, and that's how we got the job, and so I've had a couple of those, and so that's where you're really going to have the value is being connected to a community. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, companies that require certifications, that's been a really nice filter for me to know which companies not to go work for. It's been really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Leo.
Where I've seen it always, it's the same with anything like this, is it's a gateway to go to the next step. So in the UK, it will be you do your O-levels, which take you to do your A-levels, your A-levels to take you to a degree to go on, if that's the path that you choose. And they set these barriers to put you into a situation. As another person who doesn't have a degree, who decided that wasn't the way I wanted to do it and still have managed to build my own company, I find that when people recruit just on paper, they miss looking at the people.
Yeah, we have found that there's a certain kind of person that we like to work with that often didn't make it through any of those things, and they tend to be able to solve problems faster. I tend to, if I hire someone with a lot of degrees and certifications, it's mostly like a trial, like, well, we'll see how they do. I'm not sure if they can actually do this, but we'll see. I don't look at certifications, and lots of certifications and lots of degrees usually means you have to get over something with me. Then that I'm going to give you a free pass. I kind of feel like, well, you might be broken, but we'll give you the best, a benefit of the doubt to start. Go ahead, Hasma.
Yeah, I think certification gets you in the game, but I focus a lot on soft skills. And most importantly, attitude. So I can teach some of these skills, but I cannot teach anybody an attitude. So I focus a lot on the attitude.
Yeah. I was in a meeting yesterday with someone. We just finished a big project, and a lot of the people that were working on the project are coming out of office hours. One of the comments that came up was they just couldn't believe how supportive and enmeshed the team is. That regardless of how rough it got, everyone just kept on working on it and working with each other and supporting each other. And it didn't turn into this, kind of weird political mess. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we pick people that work well with teams and work well with each other. And, and that was more important than a lot of other things. Go ahead, Rupert.
Just to put a twist on this, what if for an outside person, they were seeking a position with a company that offers certification? If you wanted to go work for Google, is it helpful to go get the Google certifications or AWS?
Yeah, absolutely. The way into Google now is going to be, it's going to continue to be, or more important, grow with Google is going to be more important. You want to research that. You know, a lot of their things, Google is basically, and eventually Apple will do the same thing. And so will Facebook. And AWS, they're all going to move past traditional colleges, because the colleges aren't generating the people that they need at the rate that they need them. And so you'll see that there's all this, the Go with Google is trying to be nice about it, but they dropped university requirements a couple years ago. And now they're moving, they did that in preparation, I think, for what they're doing now, which is basically saying you can have any background and grow with Google. And that's them basically building an on-ramp, you know, into their companies, because they're thousands of people short, and they're no longer willing to play by any sort of rule, because it's going to start impinging on their growth. And go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was listening to a webinar last year where the guy who hosted it said that he likes to hire people for who they are and not what they know.
Yep.
It makes a lot of sense. It really does.
Thanks. All right. All right. Let's go jump to the next question. We're going to run out of time.
Sure. Chris Erlin, Maitland, Florida has the next one. Has anyone had experience with monthly courses, specifically interested in music production, or any other recommendations for a home musician to learn how to finish their tracks?
Go ahead, Carl.
I'm always going to suggest Berkeley. So this is their online courses. Their online courses are getting really good now since COVID started. So now they're in their second academic year for online courses with the upgrade. This is mastering courses, many courses. Essentially, this is like a segment of their entire degree. So you can just pick and choose which courses you want to do online. It's exactly the same. And you can actually do them for credit as well.
It's an incredible school. I haven't done any of the online ones, but I know that the school itself is top notch. Next question.
David Brady in New York is up next. Has anyone used Zoom's delegate feature to transfer meeting owner? And is this an available process between Zoom tenants?
I've experimented a little bit. I don't know if it's the delegate, but I know that Mickey used to be able to start the meetings. And so because I had handed him a token, I don't know if that's making him a delegate or not. But we're going to be experimenting more with that over as we go into after hours. We have to kind of start setting up a bunch of tools that have it not be me. One of the things I have to do is port all this out of 090 and into its own platform, and that takes work because I have to get all the 1080p stuff handled. But so we'll experiment more with that, but I haven't done much of it yet. Go ahead, Chris.
I know that, excuse me, in a pro account where you have multiple seats, that you can assign people in your organization that have control over meetings that you start. So like if I start a meeting,
Right.
Paul can, if I schedule the meeting, Paul can take it over if I can't make it.
Right.
Again, I don't know if that specifically talks to this, but it's an interesting facet of having multiple people in being able to control a meeting.
Next question.
Chris Earl of Maitland, Florida is up next. What Mac apps or plugins, and where should I put them in my audio chain to monitor my own sound level? For example, to prep for a target -24 for an office hours mic check.
Go ahead, Carl.
Loopback would be a good one. It's not going to give you the same -24 we have in our meters, but Loopback would be a good one to start with to show you just levels.
Loopback and audio hijack. Yeah. just buy them together. Don't go ahead, Bill, real quick.
Well, the whole thing about standards is they should be standard. So in theory, if you're at -24 LUFS as a average on any software, that should be exactly the same level. Now, I'm not saying it always works that way. There can be out of spec devices, but it is a standard. So you should be able to rely on that in any software that's well coded.
Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend loopback/audio hijack. Specifically, you want audio hijack, and then get the free version of the Ulean loudness meters, and that's every bit of the tools you need. And then reach out to somebody here in office hours, and we will absolutely help you set it up.
Yeah. Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. Alex, what's the name of the site that lets you record voiceovers?
The one I play with that I do quietly, and mine's hidden. I'm not going to tell you what my name is because I just do it for fun. Is called Hit Record. It's so Hit Record. They put out little challenges that they tweet out. Hey, do this, and I just do it for fun. And I do characters for it. It's just something to do on a Saturday. sometimes they send me money or they chase me down trying to figure out where they're going to transfer it. But it's like $50. It's like a, you know, I think I used the money for it on the last one to get a spaghetti maker. So I can make pasta, just in case you're wondering. Anyway, so and so the my wife was very impressed with that. So anyway, so that, yeah, that's the one. Now, if you want to get into a website where you can try out and do stuff, I would, you know, there's other ones like Voice Jungle. You're not going to make a lot of money in Voice Jungle, but you are going to get a lot of practice. So, and so you want to look at, to do voiceovers. I mean, any of us that have done it, I'm sure Bill can attest to this as well, is that there's 200 of them that you have to get out of the way, you know, like 200 or 300 of these things that you have to do before you're really ready to go out on your own and find it, you know, to really be, you know, whatever. And I would really look at voice coaching as well. There are things to do to do it better. But number one is you want to do a lot of it. And then number two is you do want an expert to kind of pick at you and show you that you're doing this funny thing with your mouth, you know, with your voice or whatever. Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
Just let the record show that today is the day I adopted the term spaghetti money from Alex's comment.
Spaghetti money.
For the rest of my life, that's what it's going to be. That's spaghetti money.
Next question.
Moving on. Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas says, who's attending the Zoom Academy 2021 today?
I may try to play it in the background. I'm just really busy. Go ahead, Leo.
I attended this morning's or the UK morning version of it for about 25 minutes.
How was it?
What do I say? People without microphones. The chief executive doesn't have a microphone, is on a green screen, and his ears keep disappearing. Maybe because the product can do it, and he doesn't. He's making so much money, he doesn't have to.
No, I think it's
sound good.
I don't know what the answer is, but I feel like Zoom is trying to be every day. You know, this is just there's always this sensitivity, and I admit that we were part of the problem at Google when with Hangouts, where we just turned the notches all the way up and made everybody look great. And then people get frustrated they couldn't look like that. So I think that there's a little bit of a trying to even the playing field, like, hey, we can do this with just the same tools that you can do. But I can't watch virtual backgrounds for more than a couple minutes before I'll just turn it off. Go ahead, Hosmuk.
Yeah, I was planning to attend the US time. And when Leo gave me feedback, I've just changed my mind. So.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
We got a demo of the event platform yesterday, and let's just say it was lacking. And both of the Zoom employees, both on virtual backgrounds.
Yeah. Liam?
So going back to the bit that the two bits there for Hasmuth, you know, the person interviewing him was better and didn't fade in and out, but it was like the absolute worst out of the three people I watched is Zoom's chief exec. On the second point, I went through this new platform because it's live on the new platform, and it's just the links to various different things in the chat window, and I'm just sitting there going, I'm missing something here. I'm absolutely like, where is this all connected together? And one of the really weird things, it allows you to join things twice, and I couldn't work out why I couldn't actually start. It was because I was still in after hours. It won't let you start two things at once, and you're like, but why did you let me click on two things? You should have closed down and opened me. You shouldn't have allowed me to do that.
Right. Yeah. The one thing that I find kind of interesting, I ran into yesterday, was called In-Event, which I haven't seen before. Sony did they had their thing, their event was a disaster, but the event itself, like the content itself, was disjointed and didn't make any sense, and I couldn't figure out how to watch anything. And so what they implemented wasn't great, but the look was pretty cool, and it had lots of little hooks that you could go into and put things in. I don't know whether the fault was Sony's or the fault was In-Event, but the look is kind of worth taking a look at. But again, it's. I think you need to use something, you know, like what Grant and Blue are working on, or like, you know, I think they know it better because they're event people. So, you know, but I think that's the thing. You need some kind of front end, and I don't think Zoom's going to produce it. I think that what for some reason, and I apologize to Grant and Blue that I can't think of the name of it right now. It's just not popping. Like it's early, still early in the morning for me. But I think the mixture of what we're doing with Office Hours 2.0 and what they're doing is going to be a really fascinating connection, because we're going to be able to produce really, really high quality videos to insert into that system. Next question.
Comes from Guy Cochran, our friend who's often on the panel. A thought about Pepwave for bonding of video transmission versus LiveU and other similar systems.
Yeah, go ahead, Tucker.
The LiveU versus Pepwave thing is they're a little bit different. I mean, it's LiveU is specifically doing streaming, and yes, it's over an IP connection and that sort of thing, but the Pepwaves are a fantastic solution for it. I specifically use, let me reach up and grab it because it's within reach because I brought it to Japan with me. I use this guy, which is a Pepwave unit, and it takes 2 SIM cards and does a great job of giving me a very, very solid connection almost anywhere I am. I bring them into every ballroom I wind up in because, whenever somebody decides that they need internet at the last minute, this is a lot less expensive than venue. Yeah, than asking the ballroom. But also it allows us to use the venue's wired connection and then still have the cellular backup and do all the bonding. So it's a really good solution. They do a lot of smoothing and things that help with video streaming.
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
I know that LiveU have these priority SIMs that get priority traffic over the cell networks. I don't know if Pepwave always have that.
That's the biggest problem we've had with Pepwave is not getting the same level of service that we expected. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, you have to make friends with people in government jobs to get those priority SIMs or media professionals, because they do exist and you can get a hold of them.
But yeah, if the average Pepwave, the problem we've had is that we use them. We had one in our truck all the time. So anywhere we showed up, as soon as we got power, we had internet. Waiting for internet to come in, we would have five bonded connections back to our home base, and it worked generally really well. We would never stream over it because you run into data caps, you run into all kinds of other things. Like you can get those SIMs, but you can't get them easily. Or at least we didn't find that you could get them easily. And so the LiveU, you never hit a data cap. You always have priority on the network. You always have those things. It's just a lot more expensive. So that's the 2 sides of that. Next question.
Dave Kaufman in Vancouver, BC says, why is the ocean such a good test of a video encoder? What are the symptoms of encoder overload?
I'm going to answer this one really fast because we're going to kind of move through it. It's because there's so much changing. So many pixels are changing, and there's so much color that's there with so many pixels changing all the time and randomly. There's no way to know which direction they're going to go. Also, it's picking up not only the movement of the water, but the reflection around it. So that reflection is going across it. And so all of those things together create just an enormous calculation puzzle for something encoding. That's why I shoot lots of it. Next question.
Leo Mindell here in the panel. Up next with Alex, was there any takeaways from the MacBreak yesterday?
I'll be honest, when I'm on shows, including this one, I remember almost nothing. So I don't remember. I'm in the show and I'm talking to everyone. I don't even know what we talked about on MacBreak yesterday. Was there I just respond. It's like kind of like a lower brain, just say stuff and then I turn off and then I go do something else. What did we talk about something important yesterday? I don't know if we did. No takeaways. Yeah. If someone else has a takeaway from it, that would be great. I know I talked about Todd because Todd pinged me on Discord. We were talking about how, I think I talked a little bit about, I always talk about office hours. So I know there's some of it in there, but I don't remember the subjects. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next with, have any of you had to deal with the language cultural issues on site or in the studio? What techniques have been useful to bridge the communication gap?
Go ahead, Matt.
So here in Montreal, there's a whole English-French divide thing going on. And
that's one way to say it.
That's one way to say it. So I'm perfectly bilingual, so I'm able to talk to the French text in French and English text in English. And simply, there's no talk about religion or politics on my shows ever. And that usually calms it. And we usually stay to the program,
Yeah, go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, finding, especially at where I am right now, but anywhere, finding something that is not, finding a way to be respectful, that is not necessarily trying to mimic their version of respectful. So something that I just have a habit of doing is just when I greet someone, I always just, it's this kind of thing. And that's doesn't come from anywhere specifically, but it's widely kind of accepted as this is a respectful way to just communicate in general. And as long as you can get like, I respect you and what you're saying is important. My body language says what you're saying is important to me, even though we have this language barrier, we'll work through the language barrier. I'm dealing with that daily a lot right now.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Hopefully I'm coming in. Yeah, I was on a shoot yesterday where we had a Spanish-speaking person and an interviewer, and it was a long interview, and they had a translator there, a live person translator. But the problem is, in order to not spoil the Spanish-speaking person's track, she had to finish whatever she was saying before the translator could start translating, so the interviewer could hear her response and then pose a question, which would then have to be translated back again. And sometimes she would go on for like 5 minutes before, so the translator's having to keep all that in his head, of what she said to translate it or at least give her the gist. And that was kind of problematic. And I did put my headphones onto Google Translate on my phone just to see how well it would do. And it seemed to keep up pretty well. I think if she had done that, she may have been able to keep up silently without having to avoid spoiling the track.
Definitely with dealing with crew or with just partners that I've worked in a couple of different countries. And the big thing is I tend to talk a little slower than I naturally talk. So I will talk like this. I tend to have a little bit more diction, and I tend to not use any kind of colloquialisms. So I'm hard nouns and verbs and ones that are generally simple. So if it's got a lot of consonants in it, I won't use it. So I definitely have I can't tell you what it is exactly, but I know I shift gears, especially just because I know that I don't know a lot of other languages, so I know that I would need that. I always joke with partners that their English is better than my whatever language it is, because I don't, if you can speak 2 languages, you're bilingual, and if you can speak 1 language, you're American. so anyway, I'm limited by that capacity. Next question.
Craig McFarlane in Boston, Massachusetts, up next. Is there a free, cheap tool for RTMP health and stats as a test or monitoring stream?
I don't know if there's a cheap one. The encoders, like elemental encoders, have a lot of telemetry data in them. So we just go to a page and it just shows us how many frames we've dropped, and we've got tons and tons of logs. That's another reason that we like the encoders, but I don't know of an inexpensive solution for that. Next, go ahead, Rupert, real quick.
Just a guess, maybe pfSense, and they may have a plugin that you can put on a router that's open source. If you can get that in between your source and your destination, it may be able to pick apart some of that stuff.
Yeah. The next question.
Brent Kruger in Minneapolis. Has anyone tried the new PinPoint tech from Bose that supposedly runs noise reduction on both ends of calls using artificial intelligence? A possible local fix for bad remote audio, he wondered?
PinPoint tech from Bose. I have not. Is it? I don't even know if it's software. I imagine it is. We'll have to check it out. Yeah, we'll check it out. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael. Has anyone worked with Node-RED? And he's got a link there. It's a Node.js based data flow programming environment similar to Isadora.
This has definitely come up in conversations here when we were talking, I think, about Node-RED, or I think Andy Carluccio has talked about it a little bit in some of his, and it looks super powerful. I got super excited about it. I have not had time to dig into it. So maybe we'll do some kind of lab somewhere in the after hours at some point to dig into it, because it looks amazing. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael wants a thought experiment. Your jurisdiction has decreed that all events over 5,000 to 10,000 people must be virtual. Do you think we'd see a strong legal backlash from the industry, as in lawsuits, or do you think we'd all roll up our sleeves and innovate?
Thought if your jurisdiction. Go ahead, Stuart.
The only people this really affects is the owners of stadiums. Everything else can be smaller events. It's like people who are running sports grounds and the like that would.
Well, there's everyone building,
and there's not enough of those around the world to be a really big push against it.
there's a lot of, I mean, obviously event people that are trying to figure out how, I mean, there's a huge numbers of people that could convert, but they haven't, you know, and I think that the problem that they're having right now is not so much that there's a jurisdiction that's decreeing it as much as there is a general resistance from a lot of people to going, you know, I think, and they're going to continue to have that problem, and that problem this fall will probably get worse. So things with large gatherings are going to have, you know, a little bit more trouble. One thing we're experimenting with is that I'm going to try this. Douglas, you'll have to let me know in Discord whether that just worked or not. If you have, when we get to the top of the hour, if you have less than, I think I mentioned this, less than 2 votes positive, we're just cutting them out so that we can move on. We put a new tool in that let us push them back to your notes, so that you can use them another day. So we're testing that right now. But for anyone listening, just note that as we get to the bottom of an hour, we just have to be able to keep moving. And so what we're going to do is if you don't have if there wasn't a lot of traction today, we're going to try to push them back to folks, and then they can bring them in another day rather than rushing as much as we have in the past, you know. So we're trying to kind of figure out a way, because a lot of them, if they're general questions, especially on the first hour, they'd be good tomorrow as today. But I felt bad about, I started this last week and we were deleting them and I felt very sad deleting, you know, like it just disappears into the ether. So Chris put in a little reverse tool. So hopefully that worked. All right, let's go ahead and jump to the first question. We're changing gears to our set gear. Now, this is a conversation about, and I would normally just say we were going to talk about this for a little while, but wow, we have a lot of questions. This is a very popular, turned out to be a very popular subject. So we're going to go ahead immediately into questions, but we can kind of talk about them in detail. So let's go ahead and what we're talking about really, if you're listening here, is that what do you bring to a set? So how do you clothe yourself? How do you, what kind of food? If you bring food, I bring food, bars. What kind of gear do you bring? So we're going to kind of talk through that. But if you have questions about that, go ahead and put them in, and let's go ahead and jump into the questions. I can't hear you, Bill.
I'm sorry. First one comes from Chris Earl in Maitland, Florida. He's actually doing a little inside baseball because he wants to talk about office hours panelists. And what are the idle animation expectations for us while the show is live? Sipping a drink, checking a phone, so forth. What are the limits?
It's interesting. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, that's why I oftentimes volunteer to cut the show, because I fidget a lot. So cutting the show keeps me focused on the task.
Yeah, I mean, the things that I will say, the things that I frown upon are eating in the window. I have a thing about it, like it just is really bothers me. And so drinking in the window is fine. Like, so having a cup of tea or something like that, we all need to keep our voice going. So we're talking for a long time. So I understand that's an understandable thing. Eating in the window, talking on other calls is particularly distracting for me. So I don't mention it, but I definitely notice it. just so you know, like, so so that, you know, we try to do, especially in the second hour when we have a guest, is when anytime we have a guest that's from the outside, I'm super like, if someone does anything that doesn't look like looking forward or having a drink, I'm like, really? Like, I brought somebody in, you know, like, you know, so there's a little bit of that. Go ahead, Bill.
Whoops, I'm sorry, backwards. The challenge for me has been, we're here for at least 2 hours, 3 hours if you consider the pre-show, possibly 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday or Sunday. So the ability to completely shut down everything except focus, that's really hard to sustain. And I agree, you know, you just have to allow people to drink. I agree that eating, I'm going to go to black or throw up something if I must be here and I've got to do something. Yeah, Stewart's cookies. But basically, I think the goal is to try to be as present as you can be, as much as you can be, and not distract. I think Alex's point is, if I'm over here working on something and making a lot of physical activity.
I'm mostly sensitive about office hours itself. The office after hours is I'm a little less sensitive to, or a lot less sensitive to. It's the 2 hours. I'm like, for 2 hours, we just need to be on. You know, go ahead, Leo.
So the question is, do you prefer going to black or the camera off? That's the main question, isn't it?
I would turn the camera off only because it tells us that you're off. for YouTube, you don't show up. If you go to black, if you go to black, it means that there'll be a black space inside of YouTube. If you turn it off, you'll disappear inside of YouTube, as opposed to that. And that may be different. It'll be the same. We'll have the same issue inside of, as we do Zoom ISO and Zoom OSC. You doing that will tell Andy's code that you're no longer active, and we'll kick you out of that gallery. And so it will. So turning it off is better from our perspective. And I wouldn't have said that a couple weeks ago, but because we need to know when you're not there, I would rather you turn it off. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just for anyone who is watching the gallery view, if you watch closely, you will note when people who are panelists are actually like typing away, or they're looking up websites to actually answer questions. So that sort of thing is research. It's the same thing as you would do if you're in a real office. But I'm going to make a point. I reserve the right to have my cookies.
There you go. Just not during the second hour with a guest. That's all I'm saying. Like first hour, just if you, Stuart, if you can contain yourself just between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Just at 7:55, just go, it's time for my cookie. There you go. Yeah, maybe. All right. Next question.
Moving on. Now, this comes from Leo Mindell in the group. And Leo says, who do we supply our postal address to for the office hours and after hours shirts?
Working on it. We got to finalize the logo first. We're working on the logo. We have a logo. Chris Fritchie has done some renderings of it, which look amazing. There's some of it on the website. And I just want to let that settle a little bit before we start to accessorize, but we are going to accessorize. I have to, the other thing that I'm finishing right now is getting the 501c3 done in the United States, so that if you bought stuff from us, it's supporting the program, supporting what we're doing, as opposed to going to me or somebody else or whatever. I just want it to be able to support what we're doing. Go ahead, George.
I'd just like to say, when doing office hour gear, remember there are different sizes on this panel, please.
No, we'll definitely make sure that we're as many different sizes. And there's some folks on here, make sure that we trim them for women. So there'll be the women, it won't be just all square shirts. I get a lot of flack when I do that. So we'll definitely make sure that we're thinking about everybody as we do this, or as many as we can. Next question.
Comes from Leo Mindell again. Work boots, Doc Martens, Timberland, Blundstone. Which ones do you wear for extended periods without issue?
Go ahead, Stuart.
Oh, I have a recommendation for this, and I'm just going to bring it up. These are Redback boots. They are an Australian-made company, just like Blundstone is meant to be. They're available with or without a steel cap. They're available in brown and black, and they take polish really well. They're actually a hiking boot, but they look like a work boot on set. And if you polish them neatly and are wearing long black pants, they look like a dress shoe, but you've got to just take care of them. They're absolutely fabulous. Redbackboots.com.
Go ahead, Matt.
So I have to wear steel cap boots or shoes on a lot of our shoots. And I was lucky enough to, one of these trucks came by that supply boots to all the employees at this company that I was working at. And I went in there and there was like, I don't know, hundreds of different styles. And I was there for an hour trying different ones on to try to find something comfortable. And the Timberland short boot was the best one I found for long durations. I wish I had a model. I'll try to find it.
George.
So if you run on the wide feet, Timberland, New Balance has steel toe shoes also, but I'm a big fan of Birkenstocks. That's all I wear, and I don't mean the sandals, but you could buy actually Birkenstock shoes.
Is it Morel? I think is something that for walking shoes that a lot of folks that I work with use. I have to admit, for whatever reason, for the last 30 years, I've just worn Doc Martens. That's all. I have sandals at home, and are barefoot and Doc Martens. When I was younger, they were boots that went pretty high up, when nowadays they just look like regular shoes. They're just the regular Doc Martens shoes, and those I've worn those for just so long that I'm so comfortable with the fit and everything else that's all I wear. Go ahead, Bill.
I tend to go with Timberlands on set, but if I have to have something that's more protective. But I also ran across, there are specialty stores in the US that sell a brand called Mephisto. They are the most comfortable, dressed-looking shoes I've ever worn. They are not cheap. So you go in and you come out with a pair of shoes and it's going to be a couple $100, but boy, they are comfortable over the long run of a 12-hour day on set.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill. William.
NAP, KNAPP. They're very often used by police, fire, etc. But my family's firefighters, and it looks good.
Next question.
Also extra wides.
Very good. Next question.
Jasmine Lee in Singapore is up next, and the question is, how many pockets is enough? That is an N number that has no infinite.
Carl.
The answer to your question is 42.
I was going to say the same thing. 42. 42 is the right number. Yeah, like
42 is the answer, Jasmine. So this is a Scotty vest. This is the Quest vest. Scotty, we could do a whole second hour on Scotty vest, to be honest. But this is their 42. I'll calm down, let the meters come down a little bit. I've put up a little graphic here showing where the pockets are on the interior and the exterior, but go to their website. If you're interested, they have dresses as well. So it's not just men's clothing. They actually do have women's clothing in there, and they have a whole women's series. But yeah, but Scotty vest, and the answer is 42.
Go ahead, Leo.
Just a quick shout out to Jasmine. It's Jasmine's idea this second hour, and she came up she was talking about the fact that for women's in particular, they have no pockets in their trousers, and it's just a disaster for them.
Yeah, George.
Nice shot the car on the Scotty vest. Scotty vest has undergarments also, so you could really go crazy with Scotty vest, and it has lots of pockets on the garment. Yes, they do.
The my health, I can't operate without a Scotty vest when I travel. So when I travel, or I have lots of different ones. I have warm ones and vests, and I think there's one right over there that's kind of like a shell, and you can put, just in case you're wondering, you can put about 40 pounds in a Scotty vest, and you might want to know why you would put 40 pounds in. If they tell you can only have one carry-on, you can take one whole carry-on and put it into your Scotty vest, because now it's a jacket. It's just a really heavy jacket. It's not a bag. Now it's really hard to walk with. So you go ahead and get a cheap little bag that folds up into itself at the airport, and then you put everything into it. Then you go through the little thing, and then you put it in your vest, and then you put it all back in the bag and call it a day. Anyway, so the Scotty vests are key to the operation, and you get used to where everything is. Like your headphones are over here, and this is over here, and everything, you can just find everything. So, and then the other thing is if I have anything with a cargo pants on the side, I always want zippers. I'm always afraid things are going to come out. So anyway, next question.
Douglas Carmichael is up next again. At outdoor festivals, there seems to be a more relaxed standard of appearance compared to the usual show blacks. Do you think it would elevate public perception of our industry if companies required corporate class appearance at every show?
Go ahead, Carl.
So in Australia, you have to wear high-vis. Full stop. Legislation.
Yeah.
And you can have high-vis with your logo on the back. You can have pink, orange, green. So you can choose which color high-vis, and you can have patterns on there as well. Yeah. But yeah, high-vis.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
On a set in an enclosed indoor space, if you're using lighting and the place is relatively dark, show blacks actually have a function, because if you have anything reflective on set and you're shooting it, you cannot see people walking around if they're mostly wearing black. If they're wearing Hawaiian shirts, they get distracting. So just know that on an interior shoot, sometimes that's a key.
Go ahead, Stuart.
I'd like to thank Carl for the Scotty vest suggestion. And the first thing I was looking for was a high-vis Scotty vest.
You should talk to Scott about it.
I don't know. There's no such thing as a black high-vis vest.
Yeah.
There kind of is, but I won't get into that now.
Yeah.
There is if you're working on a white set. The concept of show blacks is somewhat ridiculous when sometimes you are. I was working in a museum once. It was stark white. They go, oh no, you have to wear show blacks. Why?
Yeah, I mean,
makes no sense.
And I will say that as far as bringing up historically within, not so much currently because we haven't had to go anywhere, but with Pixelcore, we issued shirts. So we issued you your show blacks, which were a pretty nice shirt. I'm pretty particular, so they were nice button-up shirts or nice polo shirts, and then we had T-shirts. And so what we would do is T-shirts were load-in days, so you would all have this, but we'd all be logoed, and you'd have logo T-shirts on the load-in days, and then you would have either, depending on where we were working, it was either polo or button-up shirt. And then for some of our stuff, it was dark, black suits. And then you could use like, not that I'm particular, but if it was a suit, you could have a white shirt, a blue shirt, or a gray shirt underneath it. And there was those three colors. Don't experiment. Don't get creative. So our job is to be behind the show, so anybody who showed up loud, usually now, in almost every major event that I work in, people get issued something, and sometimes it's Tommy Bahamas, with a logo on it, that kind of thing. So, it can be a lot of different things that are more relaxed, but the fact that everyone has the same thing also tells people who you are when you're talking to them, and tightening up their look. There's a team building thing there that, providing everybody something makes a difference. Even when we had Pixelcore, when we were doing just Pixelcore teams that were volunteers and on teams and so on and so forth, we gave away shirts, and they became as valuable as anything else that we had. Everyone wanted one of those shirts because you could only get one by working on a project. So next question.
Moving on, Douglas Carmichael's back again with, have any companies created dress codes for employees and freelancers? Do you usually provide a company standard uniform or put the responsibility on the employee or freelancer themselves?
We just talked about that. But yeah, I mean, we definitely, a lot of folks will issue things to people to wear. Go ahead, Carl.
Can Tucker speak to that question?
Yeah, Tucker.
Yes, absolutely. As far as things that I work on, I don't work in the producer role as much anymore. But yes, absolutely. There's a pretty specific standard for working on corporate events. And then for the one that I'm on right now, we were issued very specific sets of clothes that all make us look great.
Pants as well as shirts?
Pants and shirts, yes. Pants, shirts, jacket, backpack, everything.
Right. That's awesome. Go ahead, Stuart.
There's one little part about logoed shirts that's often not talked about, and perhaps it's worth a mention, and that is if you're given a shirt with a logo, you only wear it when you're working for that particular company. You don't wear it as a regular t-shirt. You don't wear it to events so that you might get in unnoticed or whatever. It's etiquette. And it's a matter of having a bit of pride in having worked for a particular company at a particular time.
One thing that was funny when I used to be when I was a demo artist for Electric Image, the first time we went to NAB, I had they gave away ones that looked like you were in a car shop, so it had the big Alex, as one of those circles on the front of it, and it was literally made by Dickies. It was like that, very uncomfortable to wear all day, by the way. Anyway, it was all polyester and everything else. Anyway, I was going in and out of the back area, the back access for the Sands, because it was easier to get to the Mirage, and no one bothered me at all until I changed my shirt, and then they suddenly realized that I wasn't union because I just looked like one of the union guys. And then they because they would all open the door for me and everything else. As soon as I changed my shirt, they were like, "Yeah, you can't do that anymore." So anyway, next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas. Big question here: to iron or not to iron? That is the question.
Oh my gosh, iron. So Tucker.
I very specifically, my show blacks that I wear every day are quick dry. These ones are Grand Slam golf shirts. And I wear Izod golf pants, which it is incredibly difficult to make those things wrinkled. I can fly in somewhere with those, take them out of the bag, put them on, and they look fantastic. They stand up next to suits very, very well.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yep. On a hanger in the shower with you in the morning, and that's about as much ironing as I'm ever going to do. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, if we work together, we'll have to have a conversation about that. But anyway, so go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one on set, especially if it's going to be a long, for a long day, then the stuff that we wear and reissue doesn't need ironing. It still looks smart. I mean, and I wear it most of the time. You see on here, and it doesn't need ironing. But it's yeah, for long days, it's those things are good.
Go, George.
So show blacks will definitely fade quickly. Right now, I'm doing all Amazon basics, Amazon essentials. So they do shirts and pants, but the key to it is when you wash and you dry, take it out to dry and hang it up right away. It'll never wrinkle. But Amazon basics, the material will stay unwrinkled.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I always carry a hand steamer when I travel, which is a little portable hand steamer in case they don't have an iron at the hotel you're at. It always works. It takes stuff out. You don't have to have an ironing board or anything to lay stuff flat on it. It takes all the wrinkles out.
I often have a hand steamer a little hand travel one, just like yours. It works most of the time for it, especially, depending on what I'm wearing. I will say that if I'm traveling, I'm going to be there for a while for an event. I'll usually wet all of my clothes, let them dry to a certain point. While they're still damp, I'll iron them so that they are crisp. And then I will, and I'm pretty, now I have to admit, I grew up with a father that after I ironed my clothes, he'd ask if I was going to iron them. So I have a very, like the dryer, getting it to a certain level of ironing is cute, but it's not it doesn't have a crispness to it. It still has like a little bit of a texture to it that drives me a little crazy. I also love linen shirts, which makes me crazy, which is like some irony that is there. And a lot of times with teams, I won't say anything. This gets into like what producers will tell you and what they won't, but you definitely notice the folks that really know how to iron their clothes, and you make decisions about who, like when I'm going to do something at the White House, part of who I pick is who knows how to do that. It becomes less about their skill and how they're, and what we call in producer world, client facing. Are you client facing or not client facing? If you show up with a wrinkled shirt, you may get some jobs, but you won't get the ones that we have that are like high level client facing, because we just don't want to try to figure it out. And we won't usually talk about it because, it becomes a thing, so that's the problem you get into with all of these things. As you think about what you wear and what you bring and how you act and everything else, is the producers aren't going to tell you they're not going to tell you what they think. Producers don't tell you what they think. They just pick a different team the next time, or they pick a specific team for a specific job based on all those interactions, how you interact with the client, whether you talk out of turn, whether you stir things up, whether you get things done, whether you show up on time, how you dress, all those things are things that they just make decisions about. And so if you get on the top end of that, then you get the top shows. Go ahead, Courtney.
And if you're going to wet or steam your clothes, don't do it before you pack them in your suitcase. Otherwise, you'll become known as the mildew smelling guy.
Ooh, it's so bad. So bad. Yeah, no, you can only do it if you're going to be there for a while. And, and I can go a long time with, I can go on a carry-on in perpetuity, because in the hotel room, I'm pretty good at, if you roll your clothes in towels and for just a little bit and then hang them up. If they're travel shirts, they'll get to enough that you can travel with them without having them to be ironed. But anyway, next question.
Rupert McRae, Dallas, Texas, and he wants to talk about PPE, personal protective equipment and safety wear. How do you best acquaint yourself with the local health and safety, OSHA, or occupational health requirements of different locations, regions, and even countries so that you can arrive prepared and in compliance?
Go ahead, Carl.
So for every region you'll probably ever go to in your life, there will be a occupational health and safety consultant. They're kind of really important, especially if you can get fines if you don't comply. So it's always good to, even if it's just you're paying for one day, just like a lawyer, $200 an hour, just get them in, find out what the deal is in that area and what you need, tell them what you're doing, and they'll give you a short list. But these consultants are worth their money because the fines you can get can be pretty high if you don't comply.
I find that Australia is the most restrictive when it comes to that, and then the UK is the second most. UK or Germany kind of compete for 2 and 3 as far as what the rules of engagement are. In Australia, we have to take tests before we go. There's like a little online test that we have to go through,
test,
which we find it to be humorous. Anyways, Stuart.
Yep. Again, for our rules and what have you, when you go to a facility, they'll often have an induction procedure that's actually run by the occupational health and safety person of that facility.
And it changes widely. I mean, whoever your local producer is in that region should know what those rules are. As far as PPE goes, there's a PPE specialist. It's their job, to do, like we do a lot of all the PPE shows that we've worked on. We have someone there. We do an all hands right at the very beginning. We set up the rules of engagement of what you're allowed to touch, where you're allowed to touch, what you're allowed to do, where you wear a mask, where you don't have to wear a mask, which is almost never. And they supply all of the masks, all of the face shields if people choose to use face shields, masks, gloves. And then we usually have somebody wandering around behind them spraying things. And I kind of like it. I mean, as someone who's a little bit of a germaphobe at the beginning, I'm kind of glad that we have a budget now to do what I would have wanted to do in the past. Go ahead, Courtney.
Australia sounds very strict. I've been working on union sets in Hollywood for about 40 years now. And when I first came, steel-toed boots were required. And if you showed up with something other than a steel-toed boot, you were sent home. But that was only for about the first through the 70s. And now I look around the set and everything I see is running shoes everywhere. Everybody, from director on down to the grips and electricians. So yeah, I guess they just aren't enforcing it. I've never seen an OSHA guy show up on the set. So, and these are all union shoes.
I was on a set where we had a really bad, not a set, but a workplace where we had a really bad experience with steel-toed boots that I won't get into, but I won't wear them, because of what happened there. So they foot's not the same anymore. Go ahead, Rupert.
I've been in the US for like 12 years, but I know people in the UK who in that time have left trades because the health and safety restrictions have just got too tight and made their jobs unenjoyable.
Yeah, you get used to, I mean, with all of these things, you just kind of get used to how to fly through them, and you do have to just figure, with everything, you figure it out. And then you just have to kind of dance with it. If you want to do it the way that you used to do it. When we started working with the union, every person who starts to work with the union goes crazy. Like they're just like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And you learn and you kind of grown up about it. I mean, like you just kind of know that these are the rules and this is how it all fits in. And then you have to explain it to everybody and it all works, and in fact, we're a much better production company because we know because we worked with did so many union jobs. It's better for all of our on set. It's better for all of our non-union jobs because we just became very structured about those things. And the union trained us to do that. In the same sense, I think that when you end up with a good crew that understands health and safety in the UK or Germany or Switzerland, you just get used to the dance that's required, but you have to learn the steps, for those dances, and they're really uncomfortable until you just learn them and just figure out this is the way of the thing. For us, we just constantly are looking at what is the way this is going to work and how do we make it work, because there's not, we just, it can be done. I find it not to be that painful. There are times when I'm frustrated, but I don't think it's a constant thing for me. Go ahead, Matt.
You just mentioned Switzerland as being one of the top, and I would completely disagree. I do a show there every year, and people have been killed on this show for lack of safety. And since then, I've doubled down on all of the safety we do. Everyone's in high vis constantly. And
I think what happens is I realized when I said that I've worked in Switzerland, but it's always been with a UK crew. So I think that what's happening is they're using UK rules inside of Switzerland. That's the.
Yeah, that was all.
Next question.
Moving to Leo Mindell of Pinner, UK. Work gloves, full or fingerless. What pair are you using to drive back to the location when you can leave them there?
Go ahead, Carl.
So, Aquatech. So these are a go-to. So they are fingerless because you can see here they're fingered. They're actually designed for wet and cold, but they're also fingerless as well. So you can take out the fingers, use your phone, use your camera as you see here. But yeah, definitely Aquatech.
Go ahead, George.
So Setware is a US company. They're fingered. I will go back for those, and I've had those shipped back to me before. Once you put your name on it, folks tend not to take it. So they're even getting shipped back because they're pretty expensive.
Setware is they have a lot of different things that we see on sets a lot, as far as that goes. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Rupert McRae in Dallas here on the panel. For longer productions, What are the typical or exceptional laundry arrangements on set?
I don't think I've ever had anyone do my laundry, but I'm super particular, so I don't. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, I've only ever seen this for talent and not for crew. So crew are issued clothing, as you said, Alex, and they're told to bring him in a certain manner, so they have to keep them to a certain level. But as far as laundry, that's for talent. I've noticed mainly.
Go ahead, Bill. You're muted.
I'm sorry. I've been put up in extended stay hotels sometimes when I'm on a long gig, normally 2 weeks or more. And most of them have some sort of odd coin operated weird laundry system that you can, it took me about an hour to figure it out so that I could do basic stuff and not have to send everything out. Next time I may just send everything out because I got tired of it after a while.
Go ahead, Tucker.
On the specific thing I'm working on right now, they do have laundry service, but the hotel, it's pretty expensive, surprisingly. And we found that there's laundry in the basement. So that works really well.
I wash everything in the sink. So, I mean, except for my suit stuff, then I send them out. I find a place is going to do them. But I can, the Woolite makes little packets and hot water and sink and listening to some music, and I get them all. I wash them all, rinse them all, go through a couple rounds of it, hang them up, press them. And so now when I don't have to, if I can wear polyester in that sense, I will. So I only use the nice shirts if I have to, and the polyester ones will hang dry pretty well. And I might have to straighten them out a little bit, but they're pretty straightforward. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, that's the other reason for the golf pants and quick dry shirts is that that's the backup is the sink.
It's not even my backup. It's just that's how I assume I'm going to wash my clothes. And but they come in little packets, and I'll just have the number of packets that I think I need. I usually travel with about 3 or 4 days worth of clothes. That's kind of my thing, and I can go forever, wherever I'm at to do that. I am really touchy about the iron, so I won't go to back to a hotel if I get a bad iron or a bad board. But the other parts are pretty straightforward. Next question.
George E. Kennedy, Washington, D.C. here on the panel. Would you like me to share my bring along to the set worksite kit?
Yeah, let's see it.
Yes.
Let's see it, George. Oh, wow. Okay, hold on a second. I got to pin it now. So you have the Pelican Air. The Pelican Air is very nice looking too. I will say that it's a.
I have a Pelican Air. Everything from the first row to the fourth row goes inside of that Pelican Air, so it fit. I'm just gonna hit a couple of them. Video sys, I use that to test cables on if I need to on a job. Mixpre test audio lines. This though is I keep that because you want to be able to, especially when you place in screens, you want to be able to do measurements without having to plug that tape. So that's easy to do. A Leatherman rebar is just a Leatherman you keep. I have a micro pouch that has a breakdown Phillips screwdriver. It makes it easy. The Surefire Aviator has a red lens also. So if you're going backstage, you don't want to shine a bright light. So it helps. That's good to have. Setwear gloves, like I said. Unify 8-port switch. If you're video engineering, you might want to link all your record decks together. So that's good for that. Stream Deck, of course, we all know. Decimator, I keep that. Screen cleaner, just to keep things clean, whether it's your monitor you're using or Sharpies. And I say Sharpies because I have multiple. I don't like to share. So if someone keeps asking for Sharpie, I'll just give them one free and let it go. Board tape, non-sticky. You want to just keep that kind of clean. Like me, I wear glasses. Like right now, the glasses I'm wearing, they are just computer glasses. So you need those on set. A backpack, I carry that separately from a Pelican case, and that has in like my own personals. Tea tree sticks, I tend to grind my teeth, and tea tree sticks help to keep the gums clean and keep things a little relaxed. Fruit on set, tuna for lunch. If you eat a heavy load, you're gonna fall asleep. Water is a big deal. I have a Yeti 36, and psychologically, for some reason, having water in a tank makes you drink more. So that's a couple of things I keep with me on show site.
That's great. It's a great list. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to note, in terms of the flashlight idea, I do the same thing. I always carry this. It has 2 separate buttons. One is incredibly bright white. The other is red. Having a red light, if you have to walk around backstage so you don't trip over cables and things like that, is a godsend.
Yeah. I think a couple of things that I have the Leatherman tread that I wear. because it just means that I always have screwdrivers and little things and everything else on my wrist. And it usually ends up being a conversation piece. So people notice it. So you make friends because people literally walk up to you and say, "What is that?" And it is TSA friendly, though it sometimes requires a little bit of a discussion about it. I usually have some kind of energy bars, for what, for me, I just, I want something that I can just inhale, typically. If I have a little bit more time, I might have a bag of nuts, but most of what George has there, I think is very close to the kind of thing that we do there. Go ahead, Matt.
I have a Leatherman fuse that I've mailed back to myself at the TSA counter about 4 or 5 times. So it's become a kind of a lucky charm.
Yeah.
I love this thing.
Yeah. The Leathermans are kind of the key to the operation there. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Juan C. Robles in Mexico says, how formal dressing is a formal for high level events? Yeah.
So in my experience, let's say I'm doing a wedding, I'm going to dress like one of the guests, like Uncle Bob. I'm going to wear a suit, maybe a tie, depending if it's really hot. But yeah, I'm going to dress like one of the guests, and I've just got a camera in my hand.
Generally, I will dress like my client down one step. So I don't try to show up my client, but I look at what my client wears. And the first day I may not be right on, but the second day I will be, and it'll just be one step below whatever they're wearing. I very rarely wear ties, but I do wear tuxes. So, so if I wear, so I've had ones where I've worn tuxes to the process. I have my own tux because of that. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, I was gonna say just a 3-piece suit. I mean, that's whenever it's a really high scale event, it's a 3-piece suit that's been freshly cleaned and is ready to go.
Okay, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, just to reiterate your point about because my father's a tailor, we went on set where we were a bit too highly dressed in terms of that suit. So we had another spare so that we can change, just as you said, just one tier down. You don't want to, show off the groom.
Yeah, exactly. Courtney?
One problem I've always had is if the dress code is a suit, if you've got a job where you have to raise your arms above your head, the limited mobility in a suit is quite problematic. And I don't know how people deal with it. Yikes. Maybe there's something, does someone make a gusseted suit for people who have to, boom persons and things like that?
Usually what we try to do is we have different levels of what we dress in depending on what day it is. So load-in day, we're in t-shirts, setup day, we're oftentimes in, something else. And then show days is when we shouldn't have to raise anything above our head. And so it depends on the crew too, but if we're client facing a lot of times, and I've made my brother do Steadicam in a suit in the White House. so like and he does it. He does wear, he wears his tennis shoes, for moving around, but he'll wear, they're tasteful shoes that fit with the suit mostly, but he tried, he can't do dress shoes and Steadicam at the same time. Go ahead, Stuart.
Like Carl, I've done weddings and I'll never do them again. But the solution to actually being able to reach up over your head to a camera that's high enough to look over the top of the guests when they're dancing is to be wearing the jacket when you arrive, but not when you're doing the camera. And at most weddings, because you've got a formal look and everybody else will have taken off the jackets, if you've got a vest with the tie, you still look good, but you can actually reach up.
Next question.
Angela Iserman, our friend from Golden Bridge, New York, says, favorite travel pillow?
Does anyone have a favorite travel pillow? There is, I don't know what the brand is. It has memory foam that goes around my neck, and it has like a separate little loop, and you can squeeze it down into almost nothing. And but it'll open up and give it a little time, and it'll sit there and kind of open up there. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, exactly what Alex said. So memory foam, which is like a latex pillow, a little bit more expensive, but yeah, you can switch them down, put them into like a box, or so exactly what Tucker's showing.
Go ahead, Tucker. Go ahead and
here it is. I honestly would have to read the brand to see, but there it is in the pouch.
It opens up.
And there it is. Yep. And it's absolutely fantastic, especially on 13-hour flights.
Yeah. This isn't, you can't do this for everything. For a long time, my rider was any flight over 9 hours. And I picked it very carefully because the flight to London is 10. I had to be in at least comfort class, if not business class. So I think it was 9 hours was comfort class and 11 hours was business class. And so then I didn't need it as much, but it's still amazing. Go ahead, Stuart.
How many kilos does those travel pillows weigh? Because for me, it would be mass in my carry-on versus what gear I'm leaving out to be able to take the pillow.
Yeah, go ahead, Tucker.
I strap it to the outside of my bag, and it doesn't really matter, but it's pretty light.
I mean, that's what I do. I use a Rush 24 bag, and I've got all these webbing on the outside, so I can web all kinds of stuff to the outside of it, and I just add it to the end to the outside. Go ahead, Leo.
Sort of related is earplugs, the wax earplugs. If you're traveling a long distance, the wax ones are just completely different to anything you've ever used before.
Are they disposable? Is that?
Then yeah, you can reuse them, but if you buy them, if you're in the UK, you get the Boots ones. They come in a pack, normally a pack of 12. But once you've used wax earplugs, you will never go back to foam ones, because they just once they mold into your ears, after about 30 seconds, you don't actually know they're in your ears anymore.
Oh, interesting. Tucker?
For earplugs, I use Etymologic Research earplugs and ER4s or whatever. But yeah, they're absolutely marvelous. Similar deal.
Next question.
Ed Willick is in next from Valley College, New York. What, if any, PPE like high-vis masks, gloves are you providing yourself versus the production providing for you, and how has that changed post-COVID?
I have my own mask, like that I use. Sometimes I put sometimes I'll put their mask underneath it, but I still have my own that I use. It's one that you can insert a filter into it, so it's got a little fold. It's cloth, but you can put a filter inside of that mask, and I like it. It's comfortable. It took me a long time. My wife went crazy because I was buying masks for 2 months. Just every mask that I saw, that might be interesting. That might be interesting. I did learn that hard masks didn't work because you can't open your mouth, so you have to have something that can move with you. What I really want is a Dune mask. Like I keep on watching Dune going, I want that mask, but I haven't figured out a way to get a solid quality of one. I've been thinking of handcrafting one, because I think if I keep on thinking, this is just going to end, so it will be useless, but now I'm not sure. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, the first time I'm required to bring a specific piece of PPE, I wind up buying it, and then I just keep it unless it's something that times out. If it times out, I do tend to ask for it to be provided.
Now that I said the Dune one, I figured out how to make it, and I might make one. So we'll see. We'll go from there. Next question.
Wait a second. You did that in advance of the new Dune, which comes out. The new movie trailers are out.
But the movie isn't out yet, so I got to have my Dune mask for when the Dune movie comes out.
There you go. Okay.
I just realized I can talk to him. I'm going to talk to Martin about it. My friend that's ILM model shop.
Still suit
I was like, if I give it to him, I bet you he'll figure this out real quick. All right.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Have any of you had to deal with employees or freelancers with tattoos or piercings or other body modifications? Do you typically require them to cover them up when on site, or do you have a blanket prohibitive policy?
Go ahead, Tucker.
You have to be unbelievably talented for me to bring you in, if that's the case. And it's, I don't dispute the decisions or anything like that. It's just cannot put that in front of my clients, period.
Yeah. Carl.
So in Australia, there's discrimination laws, but people with tattoos and a lot of piercings will know they may not be customer facing. So they may be working on the back end and they won't be customer facing, but some people are okay with that.
And this gets back into the world of freelancing, where producers don't have to say anything to you. A lot of times they won't tell you that this was a problem. They just won't call you back. So that's the hard part, is that they don't have to have a conversation with you about it. And you always have to remember that just because someone didn't have a conversation with you about something doesn't mean it wasn't a problem. It just meant that they chose not to have that fight. You didn't do something that required them to take action. but they'll just be like, ooh, like that's not going to work. And, there are definitely people that I don't care about. I don't have any, but I love tattoos and piercings, and I constantly am thinking about getting some, but not piercings, but I used to have an earring. So I don't have any issue with it at all. And I think it looks cool, but to Tucker's perspective, for most of my clients, putting it in front of them what happens is that you, in a corporate environment, you are always trying to stay away from, there's a bus and you're trying to stay away from the front of it, because, when everything's working, it doesn't really matter. You can do whatever you want to do. When things go wrong, whoever's closest to the front of the bus gets thrown under it. And so when you ask for, this is why we bring a lot of gear. When you ask for things from other people, you're taking a step towards the front of the bus. When you aren't dressed the way you should, you're taking a step towards the front of the bus. When you are late, you're taking a step in front of the bus. When you're not prepared, you're taking a step in front of the bus. It's not any one of those gets you in trouble. And if everything works, it doesn't matter. But you keep on taking those steps, and eventually you're it, if something goes wrong. And so that's the thing you want to kind of, I know that if I ever got any tattoos, I would definitely have the capability of covering them. Like I wouldn't put them somewhere that you could see. Go ahead, Bill. I can't hear you, Bill. Can't hear you, Bill.
Crew is one thing. We had talent show up. They had come to the audition in long sleeves. They showed up on the day of the set after the ladies who were casting it hired this guy as a hiker, and he had full sleeves. And you're just going, you didn't tell us about that. So literally, it's just a danger zone. I know your personal expression should be a big deal, and I agree that, there's all sorts of reasons for you to do it, but just understand it is going to have an impact. We would not only never hire that actor again, but the fact that he didn't disclose it ahead of time, that it could be a problem, immediately put him on a no fly, no get on the airplane list forever.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
These are tough topics to talk about. I mean, I have dreads. I pretty much keep my dreads pretty neat, but you clients know who the crew is going to be ahead of time. And a lot of times, I might not be front facing, tech world might be in the back, but you're going to still have clients. Clients generally come to with our client and do a walkthrough and say, hey, this is George Kennedy, he's handling the switch, blah, blah, blah. So, it all depends on the job. And I think sometimes it depends on if that client has a company they're working with that's handling all the back end. So it's tough questions, and hair and tattoos and the whole 9 yards become a thing after a while, and it's either accepted or it's not.
And for me, a lot of times I'm totally fine with it, especially if it's back of house. I don't have any personal issue with it at all. Front of house, depending on the client, I might make choices about who's going to talk to the client, which is usually one of our producers. We rarely try to have the client talking to everyone for a variety of communication reasons. Go ahead, Stuart.
Just following on from what George was saying about the dreadlocks and what have you, how do we include a differentiation here between tattoos and personal choices versus cultural items such as scarification that a lot of different groups around the world have used? Is there an issue there that we need to be open about?
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so in New Zealand, that may be a bit of a problem because Maori tattoos are quite obvious. And they're quite traditional.
I think that's less of an issue, to be honest with you. Like, I would never even consider it like a scarring as a decoration. For me, I don't know. It's so ingrained in some cultures that I probably wouldn't even occur to me that was an issue. I know that sounds crazy, but it's not. To me, that's a very different thing than tattoos. Maybe it shouldn't be, but it looks to me it occurs differently. Go ahead, Leo.
So when I first read this question, I was like, I didn't see the problem. And even particularly when George said what he said, I'm like, this has changed, particularly I think in the UK, that the acceptance, if you went back in the retail environment 20 years ago, you wouldn't get a job. Are police allowed to wear tattoos now? And it's an acceptable thing. I agree there is always, with everything, there are limitations and there is levels, but it literally, I can't think of most of my clients have tattoos.
Well, I have a lot of clients with tattoos as well. I think for me, I prefer when a client walks back there to see a diversity of crew. So I prefer that to be so when I say all this stuff, I'm saying this is in general in the industry, you have to be careful about it. But I prefer to see a wide variety of gender, of race, of all those things. I like to see that. And I think it also keeps everybody honest. So people get really lazy when it's all one culture or another. And I have found that I find that that's with any culture, when they're all the same, can get lazy about how they approach the process and how they approach each other. And by having a diverse group, it keeps you honest, because you can't just get into assumptions, about it. And I've noticed that as I learned other languages, I learned other languages. Sometimes I don't say which ones because it's useful for me. But as I learned that, and I was around a lot of other people, I realized that everybody's doing everything the same way. It's just that it's when they think that no one else is listening. So anyway, so I think that's important to have a diverse crew, because it keeps everybody tight. Bill.
And there is a difference sometimes. Sometimes it's not an article clothing or an article of facial thing. Sometimes it is a cultural thing. I had a circumstance in Vegas where I was in a bar that had a no hats policy, and it came over as I was talking to my friend from V&H and asked him to remove his yarmulke. And it's like, wait a second. We are going to push back on this. That is not a hat. That is an expression. And you cannot ask him to remove that, period. And we will all leave if you do so. I mean, you just have to be sensitive to the
And in
world
general, again, a producer that has some EQ will not ask people to do anything. Like, they just won't, unless it's going to be a real problem, they won't ask you to do anything. But you just have to always know that whatever you decide to look like, you're either expanding or limiting your options, when you do that. Next question.
Rupert McRae, Dallas, Texas, up next. Any recommendations for production-related everyday carry or EDC videos on YouTube?
Go ahead, Stuart.
Alex Zadra or Demolition Ranch, but I think Rupert is actually referring to something else as EDC compared to what the common usage would be.
Next question.
Next question. Rupert McRae, Dallas, Texas, said, thoughts on tool belts and pouches?
Go ahead, George.
If you talk about a basic belt, Carhartt has some pretty heavy duty belts on Amazon. Again, Setwares, I'm a big fan of the Setware brand. They have variety of belts and pouches that you could mix and match.
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so if you're working grip or gaffer, definitely. But yeah, definitely Setware, I've noticed, does have some better ones for the gaffer, especially electrical stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Go ahead, Bill, real quick.
For photographers, there's a company called Think Tank that makes a lot of these things. And the thing that I admire about their stuff, they have a system with pouches, but it also has tabs. If you set the tab through the loops on the belt, the pouch does not move around. If you take the tab off, you can move the pouches back or front. And so if you've got a heavy pouch that's bothering you because it's in the middle of your back, you can slip it to the side. Those are exceptional if you have a lot of work to do and a lot of pouch stuff.
We're going to jump to the next question. We're running a little low on time.
Okay, Rupert McRae of Dallas, Texas. Should there be a 2022 office hours fashion calendar?
I think so. I think we're definitely going to have a fashion show. I think we're going to have a office hours Olympics eventually. It's going to be with cable rolling, motion capture, calibration, building SDI cables. You think I'm kidding, but we've been talking about this for over a decade of building production Olympics. And I think that there's going to be production Olympics at some point. And we might even figure out a way to do it over Zoom, because we all have video. So it's like, okay, start. And everyone starts rolling up their cables. I think that could be interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Carl
Tucker.
would win the instant keynote creation category.
Yeah, keynote creation. That's going to be a whole sport. I don't know if we're going to get that in 2022. We might have to do it as a temporary sport and then bring it in 2024. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, I think Brian Maddox and I are on the same page. January, show blacks. February, show blacks. March, show blacks.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas is back again with cell phones, in pocket or belt clip. And what about multiple cell phones?
I do in pocket. I don't have it on a belt clip just because it's too much hanging out. It gets pulled off. Go ahead, George.
in pocket, and I'm still waiting on a vendor to make an actual pocket that the cell phone slides into versus all the way down, something at the top.
Go ahead, Leo.
So I think the key to me has been these headphones, the ones, the bone connected ones that we've talked about before, because I can actually wear these all the time and have my phone in my pocket, not need to take it out. And I can actually answer and still talk to people.
I have to admit, the thing that no one's ever made is an analog push to talk PTT for my phone. like you're just like, how does someone never made that? And when I say no one's made it, I have talked to many companies. Like, I don't want a Bluetooth button. I want a physical PTT that I can just go like this while I'm listening, and it would revolutionize, what we do. And no one's built one. Bill. Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I've taken to carrying 2 cell phones. I never did that before, but it's one of the great benefits of doing that. I love my iPhone 10. It's a smaller figure. So I kept that when I moved to the 12 Plus, which is bigger. I find it a little uncomfortably big, but I split up so that only people who are in my personal circle who I want to break through come in on my personal cell phone. Everything else goes to work. And so if my right pocket buzzes, I ignore it. If my left pocket buzzes, I answer that immediately.
Yeah. Next question.
Rupert McRae is back and is carrying cash on location or even while traveling still relevant? And if so, preferences for wallets or money clips?
Go ahead, Carl.
On location is a good idea. If you're in, it depends where, but let's say you're on location, it's because some things are much easier to do, especially if you just need to buy something or you need to get someone on your team to buy something. Sometimes it's easier just to give them a 20 and say, hey, look, we just need lots of batteries. Go get the batteries. So there is situations. Paying local talent, if you're going to do that and it's okay in the area you're going to do it in, bring payday envelopes. These, those little yellow envelopes back in the day. Bring those so you can actually write your company's name and their name on it. So, as long as it's okay in that country to pay them in cash, so they actually feel like they've got a payday from a corporation, not just like, not just 100.
Yep. Go ahead, Matt.
So convention centers, they frown upon it, but it still happens all the time. If you need to get your truck in quick, a handshake with some cash in it will fix your problem every time.
It does. Go ahead, Bill. Oh, can't hear you, Bill.
I'm sorry. The travel industry is still built on this. So if you're at a gate boarding thing or at a ticket thing and you, in your town particularly, and you tip them nicely and politely, they will remember you next time if you're doing a lot of traveling through. Same thing with the porters in airports. Those people, I always keep cash in my pocket, 20s in my left pockets, 10s, and then 5s and 1s somewhere else so I can tip with an appropriate level of service.
I don't carry cash anymore. Like, I haven't done it for a long time. But I haven't tried to travel very much either. So it's been a little bit different. When I did it, otherwise, I carried what I called we just call it a full hand, which was, we would stack up. We'd have 100, a 50, 100 to 50 220s, a 10 2 5s, 5 1s, and oftentimes we'd have a hand plus, which would be a bunch of ones, and we hold. I'm a little specific about it. All the heads are faced the same way, and it goes, and the lowest bills are on the outside, so you can flick them open without showing how much you have. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, as far as money clips, this is a KINZD. I don't know exactly how you say that, but it's got a magnetic piece here. It holds plenty of cards. Got an opening here. I took my driver's license out because I don't want you guys to know what the numbers are. And then I always keep this with it. And
that's cool.
It's great.
Go ahead, Stuart.
I'd just like to point out some cultural differences. What Matt was just saying about a little extra grease for the wheels would not work here. It's a great way. It's a great way to get you to put to the end of the line, because the rules that are in place to stop graft. We also don't have a tipping culture because the bosses are expected to pay you a living wage. So in restaurants and cafes, you will have a tipping jar, and it is spread out equally to all the employees. So it's a cultural thing. It's a different attitude, and it would get you put to the back of the line if you were trying to push your way through.
Next question.
Dave Kaufman in Vancouver, BC. Is there a protocol to show when you're on comm so that someone who wants to ask you a question doesn't just think you're being rude.
Just point at your ear. that's the international. I'm on the phone, but you can do it with a smile. Go ahead, Bill.
It's also polite to just say I'm going off comms, and then when you come back on comms. If you're
on comms, but if someone's walking up to you, I think that was the question there.
And then
it is good protocol. We can probably do a whole nother hour on comms, but telling people that you're off comms helps a lot. Not feeling like they're being ignored. Next question.
Mike Mitchell's in Washington, D.C. Washington. What color is black? Which bag do you choose? Red, blue, and indigo blacks?
Go ahead, Stuart, real quick. Oh, did you raise your hand or you just swing it?
Oh, no, I was just pointing. There's black and there's black. And of course, there's, I got to think of the name of the band where the singer spent a league yearly dead.
Banta.
But that's a 42 reference.
I would love to. Wouldn't
there
it
are
be
some
great?
Pretty cool things done with Vanta Black. There is some pretty cool stuff.
But wouldn't it be great to have an entire crew dressed in Vanta Black? That would be. They just
nanotube clothing.
And now I feel like I have to do it anyway. So we'll have to figure that out. All right, next question.
Nobody can see the crew. Yeah. Chris Widener in Lafayette, our last one for the day. Utilikit, yay or nay?
Utilikilt, I think is what.
Oh,
is
Utilikit
or Utilikilt? It's kilt, yeah.
That's Chris Widener in Lafayette.
I would probably stick with the home wearing of the Utilikilt. I have seen Utilikilts on set. It's usually a point of humor, when someone comes to a set with Utilikilts. Go ahead, Stuart.
There's certain cultural items relating to kilts. Don't do it on set.
Go ahead, Courtney.
And if your job involves sitting down most of the day, or if it's a windy day, don't wear them.
Yeah. So, but in general, it's probably not. I wouldn't wear those to a set. I do have a kilt, but I don't wear it in public very often. Occasionally, nice occasions. Tucker.
I was going to say, or the ladder crew, please, no kilts.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we didn't even have a discussion. There was so many questions, so many great questions about that. We just were able to dig right through that. Great job by the producers who filled up our first hour, filled up the second hour with a lot of good questions to kind of move things along. So well done, and good job by our panelists. Yeah, go ahead, Leo.
Just to thank Jasmine again. She came up with this idea.
Great idea, Jasmine.
Great idea, Jasmine.
Yeah, that was a good one. I put it in there. I was like, with these ones, I never know if they're going to go big or not go big. Depending on what people's interests are. And Jasmine hit it right on the head. So really well done. All right, we're going to go into. We have, of course, tomorrow we have office hours. Quick reminder. So we're talking about building remote kits tomorrow morning, and then for. Just a note that Blackmagic has an announcement at 10. We will be doing in after hours. We're not going to have some new show or whatever, but during after hours, I moved my 10 o'clock meeting so I can hang out with all of you. So anyway, so we'll be doing in after hours. We'll cover we'll do the kind of the Mystery Science Theater version. We're not going to push it in, so come ready to watch it. But we'll talk amongst ourselves while we're all watching it. So stay tuned for that. That's 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time tomorrow. Will be the Blackmagic announcement, and we'll follow along together. But otherwise, after hours starts. After hours, by the way, runs now. I think we're going to keep on trying to run it. We've been running now for 24 hours, so it's 21 hours a day. So it's going to start right now. All right, see you guys.